Hi, this is Tom OCornor. I've been asked to say a few words about best practices in electronic discovery. To begin the discussion, I think we first have to ask what exactly do we mean by best practices. In the business world, that can have several meanings. One may be highly technical, that involves some certification or training and an actual endorsement with a standard like ISO, or taking the test to become a Microsoft certified network engineer. Or it can also mean the workflow and procedures that people use themselves, and people can become certified in something like Six Sigma to determine that they have in fact had some sort of training in this area. The legal world is a little different, however. We don't have that sort of standardization, perhaps to some extent in the criminal arena, where for a number of years, of course, we've had forensics investigators collecting evidence. Forensics investigators are often certified, trained specifically in specific software, and in many states are even required to have a private investigator's license. They have to be licensed by the state. But in the civil world, the world in which we work, that is not the most common situation. In the civil world, eDiscovery, I think, really has three main areas where we talk about best practices coming into play. The first of these is culling. Culling the data means reducing the data amount that we have collected or preserved into an amount that's reviewable or usable by the attorneys. This is because in many cases we've seen studies that show that as much as 90% of the original data that's collected is not really relevant to the matter before us, so we have to get it down to a workable amount. How do we do that? How do we become more efficient? How do we reduce the amount of data that attorneys are going to look at, keeping in mind that that's very meaningful because that amount, the review amount, is usually the greatest bulk of cost in any specific eDiscovery case. Well, we at Cavo ED think that there's a great way to do that, which is to combine several processes or steps that have typically been handled by different pieces of software. Not only do we cull by date or time as needed, we can cull by custodian, we can denist the data, we can dedupe the data, and we can produce analytics of the data that you have given us in a way that makes it available to you in a meaningful review. The second area where checklists can come into play in eDiscovery is ECA, or early case assessment. Not one of my favorite terms, as folks who know me have heard me say before, because I believe attorneys have always done early case assessment. It's not something that happened just with software. It is nothing more than the best use of all the data that you have accumulated. How to get the information you need from everything that you have collected. At Cavo ED, we believe the best way to do that is contextual review, not linear review. And to do that, we use our software to explode your PST files into usable data, to look at the concepts that we have gathered automatically in an analytic process, and even use predictive coding, which is again part of our software included in the cost of the software. We can use all of these individual tools to allow you to perform early case assessment. The third area where best practices can come into play in eDiscovery are checklists. These are nothing more than simple lists that are similar to the technical standards I discussed at the onset, but can be customized to your workflow and allow you to automate your process. Not only did they give you then process validation to make sure that you have been doing what you wanted to do at the onset, but you can also use them to forecast your budget. You can help determine how much you think you're going to spend, and then as you're working through the checklists, find out if you're meeting those budget forecasts, coming under, or hopefully not going over. The idea, though, is to give you, as I said, a process validation that gives you a repeatable, defensible process. So what can we say in conclusion about best practices? Best practices are nothing more than a way to help you control your documents in a more efficient manner. Doing that will allow you to control your costs, your efficiencies, and therefore your case. If you'd like more information, please feel free to contact me.